A trillion people. One planet, paved over completely, from pole to pole. No oceans you can see, no forests, no open ground. Just 5,000 levels of city stacked on top of each other until the bottom floors haven't seen sunlight in 1,000 years. That's Coruscant, the capital of the galaxy, and we're shown it like it's the pinnacle of civilization. Let me tell you what it actually is. Take the most overcrowded, sunless, crime-ridden slum in human history, the old Kowloon Walled City, where 33,000 people were crammed into a single block in Hong Kong, and the lower floors were a lightless maze of jury-rigged water pipes and improvised structure. Buildings there were condemned within 20 years of construction. Both British and Chinese authorities had effectively decided the land was garbage and walked away. 96 years of formal anarchy in one city block. Now scale that until it swallows an entire world, 1 trillion times over. Where does the food come from? Where does the waste go? What's holding up the top when the bottom is 10,000 years old? The honest answer is that Coruscant should have collapsed, starved, or suffocated centuries ago. It didn't, because nobody in the story ever takes the elevator all the way down. We're going to. Start with the number, because the number alone is the problem. Disney's 2024 Acolyte Visual Guide gives a census figure of 2,981,780,000,000 permanent residents, just under 3 trillion, recorded at 132 years before the original trilogy. Older legend sources cluster around 1 to 2 trillion. Official StarWars.com language calls it simply trillions of people. Those numbers vary by source, and the script is going to be honest about that variation. But every version of the figure is incomprehensible by any real-world standard. Earth's living population has never exceeded 8 billion. Estimates of every human being who has ever lived, across all of recorded and prehistoric history, reach roughly 100 billion. Coruscant's population exceeds that cumulative total by a factor of at least 10. And those people aren't spread across open land. They're stacked. Official canon describes some 5,000 levels, explicitly approximate language. Legends gets more specific at 5,127. Either way, from level 5, the lowest floor anyone can actually access in canon, to the upper atmosphere, you're moving through accumulated construction that Legends dates to 100,000 years of continuous building. Disney canon hasn't reconfirmed that specific number, but it doesn't need to. Both continuities agree on what the 2005 Star Wars Complete Locations reference book states plainly. Coruscant has been so long settled that the planet is now one megalopolis, a world city too civilized and decadent for its own good. That last phrase noticed something and kept building anyway. Here is the first problem, and it's the simplest. A planet with no farmland has to eat somewhere else. Every square meter of Coruscant's surface is structure or infrastructure. Complete Locations confirms that millions of years of overpopulation drained all natural bodies of water from the surface. The only water left is in polar ice caps, melted by processing stations and distributed through a planet-wide pipeline network. No fields exist, no pastures. Legends technical data lists foodstuffs as a major import, and the ecumenopolis logic makes that dependency unavoidable. You can't grow crops under a ceiling that used to be the sky. No canon source prints exact tonnage of food convoys arriving daily, because that scene has never been shown. Whatever hydroponic capacity exists on Coruscant runs under artificial lighting, converting energy into calories rather than sunlight into calories, a far less efficient equation. That immediately connects to the energy problem, which is its own impossible number. But set those calculations aside and focus on what total food dependency actually means in practice. Modern cities typically hold about 3 to 7 days of food in local distribution networks at any given moment. Supply chains run in real time. Cut them, and the shelves empty in days. When German forces encircled Leningrad on September 8, 1941, the city's warehouse reserves were nearly empty. They would have lasted only a matter of days. Starvation didn't arrive gradually. Emaciated corpses appeared in Leningrad streets by October 1941, within weeks of encirclement. By the winter of 1941-42, civilian rations had dropped to 125 grams of bread per day. Deaths peaked at approximately 100,000 people per month in January and February of 1942. Leningrad had 2.5 million people. Coruscant has somewhere between 1 and 3 trillion. The Battle of Coruscant in Episode 3 lasted hours. Separatist forces wanted to kidnap a chancellor, not starve a capital. An adversary who understood Coruscant's logistics, who simply parked a blockade at the hyperspace entry points and waited, wouldn't need to fight. Just patience. A planet with no domestic food production and a multi-trillion being population isn't ultimately defended by warships. It's defended by the assumption that nobody would dare. Food is at least a visible problem. Air is invisible, which makes it worse. James Luceno's 2014 canon novel Tarkin establishes that Coruscant has a weather control system, providing an artificial, temperate climate for the upper levels. Legends adds oxygen regulators and atmospheric scrubbers filtering the air, purified by what the sources call oxygen regulators and scrubbers. These technologies exist within the fiction, and acknowledging them is important. They're the in-universe answer to an obvious engineering question. But consider what it means to build them at this scale. The International Space Station's life support system supplies roughly 0.8 to 1.0 kilograms of oxygen per crew member per day, and removes a comparable mass of carbon dioxide. It works reliably for 6 or 7 people, with Earth constantly resupplying it. Scaling that to 3 trillion people doesn't produce a bigger system. It produces something categorically beyond any engineering humans have ever attempted. Upper city climate control functions only because whatever processes that air can keep pace with the output below. Legends is explicit about what happens where those systems don't reach. Lower-level inhabitants breathed toxic fumes from millennia of urbanization, while wealthy residents in the upper levels enjoyed rich and filtered air. Disney canon confirms lower levels are dark, heavily polluted, and dangerous, without describing exactly how dangerous. That air stratification isn't a flaw in the design. It's a feature of any system where maintenance is a resource, and resources flow upward. Now go further down. Legends dates the first construction of Coruscant's levels to at least 100,000 years before the films. Canon confirms the principle, if not the exact number. New buildings were built on top of old ones. Layers accumulated. Coruscant didn't demolish its past, it buried it. Every few centuries, per the source material, a new mega-level covered the previous layer. Geology has been replaced by archaeology. Troy was rebuilt 9 times on the same site, each civilization laying foundations over the ruins of the last. Archaeologists peel those layers back and read them. Crucially, Troy's buried levels don't need to bear the weight of 9 cities constructed above them. Coruscant's do, or did, because canon confirms what happened at the bottom. Level 1 is explicitly described in official Star Wars publishing as uninhabitable. Level 5 is as low as anyone can go. Levels 2 through 4 receive no description because there is nothing to describe. They've been quietly written off. Repulsor lift technology exists throughout the fiction and almost certainly addresses structural load problems that would otherwise be catastrophic. That handwave is worth acknowledging honestly. But repulsors don't grow food, don't scrub carbon dioxide, and don't change what happens to the people living below the infrastructure line. Those people are where the system reveals what it actually is. Coruscant's security force maintains a dedicated underworld division, specialists described in the lore as burly and hardened officers operating in an environment requiring fundamentally different policing than the upper city. That specialized unit's existence confirms what the visual canon demonstrates directly. Standard law enforcement doesn't function at lower levels. Criminal syndicates, Black Sun, the Hutt families, and assorted gangs run those districts according to Star Wars, the visual encyclopedia. No government has formally declared the lower levels abandoned. Abandonment doesn't require a policy memo. Governments stop sending services, and they wait to see what fills the space. Star Wars 1313, announced at E3 2012, was supposed to take players into level 1313, a district named for its position deep in the criminal underworld, hundreds of floors beneath the functioning city. LucasArts was shut down in April 2013 after Disney's acquisition of Lucasfilm. Star Wars 1313 was cancelled. Level 1313 still exists in canon. Clone Wars referenced it, but the most detailed examination of what Coruscant's lower depths actually look like never shipped. Whatever the business reason, the result is consistent. The underside of the galaxy's capital remains, as it always has, unexamined. Greek urban planner Konstantinos Doxiadis coined the term ecumenopolis in 1967, from the Greek for inhabited world and city, to describe the theoretical endpoint of urbanization, all of Earth's cities eventually merging into one continuous urban fabric. He wasn't describing a utopia. He was describing a logical extrapolation of trends already visible in his data. StarWars.com uses the word directly. Coruscant is an ecumenopolis. That word has been in official materials for decades. Nobody who used it followed it to its conclusions. Coruscant works the way a magic trick works, by controlling exactly where you're allowed to look. Keep your eyes on the spires and the Senate and the speeders threading between towers, and it's the most magnificent city ever built. Take the elevator down, past the sunlight, past the law, past the levels so old the people living in them have forgotten there's a sky, and you find the truth. 1 trillion beings balanced on a foundation that's been quietly failing for 10,000 years, fed by convoys that could be cut in an afternoon, breathing recycled air over the buried corpse of every city that stood there before. It's not the capital of the galaxy, it's the galaxy's portrait, a perfect surface, and underneath, a long way down, the part nobody wants to admit is already collapsing. Subscribe if you want more stories like this.